What do you think?
No, all good. You've done this before, so I like to keep it, relatively sort of free flowing and organic. This helps a lot. But
Absolutely. Let's see where it goes.
Always happy to diverge.
Absolutely.
And what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, we're going to publish this one this afternoon.
Oh wow! Straight away because obviously,
yeah,
it's quite timely. This is good.
Yeah, well, it is.
Is that the quickest turnaround time you guys have ever done?
Oh yeah, the team doesn't usually like us publishing on the same day as the record, but look, I gave them notice, so it's fine.
Very good.
Cool. Anything you wanted to check on before we start?
No, I think it's all good. I think I usually put some verbiage before like we make any definitive predictions. I always say my crystal ball's broken, but like this is what the market's saying, and this is what the data's saying.
For sure. Okay. No, all good. All right, I'll get us underway. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lawyers Weekly Show. My name's Jerome Doraisamy and I'm coming to you today from Camaragal Land in Sydney. I'm very pleased to be joined in studio by Cullen Haynes, who is the director at Legal Home Loans. I think this might be his 5th appearance on the show, which makes him one of the best friends of the show, if not the best friend of the show. But who am I to say? I've only been doing this show for about 2,000 episodes. Cullen, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Jerome. Congratulations on 2,000 episodes. I think you had 6,000 articles that you wrote recently. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that 6,000 number I can actually verify. I'm just assuming it's about 2,000 episodes. It certainly feels that way, having done this show since
very good.
Roughly mid-2018. Well, thank you. That's kind. Now, today we are going to be discussing how legal professionals can be taking advantage of falling interest rates, how you can be a smart lawyer, so to speak. And we are having this conversation a couple of days after we got some pretty promising inflation numbers, which has subsequently sparked a lot of discourse about the potential for interest rates to be cut by the Reserve Bank at its next meeting, which is happening in I believe, within the fortnight.
Yeah, a couple of weeks. It's going to be Tuesday the 18th.
Yeah,
after they meet for 2 days.
Yeah, there you go. And certainly some of the big banks are starting to bring forward their predicted timelines for such a rate cut. So, with that in mind, and against the backdrop of looming interest rate cuts, shall we say, whether it's at the next meeting or after that, it's important for legal professionals to have a better understanding of how they can reap the rewards in 2025, how they can get ahead of the curve, how they can set themselves up financially and for their investment portfolio. And so, who better to have in here discussing all of this than our old friend Cullen. Cullen, first of all, it's probably important to start by talking about the upcoming February meeting and the potential for a rate cut. And so, from your perspective, why is this discourse or this prospect creating so much buzz right now?
I think the obvious point is the cost of living, Jerome. I think we've had high rates for the last 1 or 2 years, ever since we had the epic low rates, obviously, of the 1.99% home loans, and after they'd been gradually ratcheted up 13 times, and we had that rhetoric from the previous governor, I think people are really starting to feel the pinch. And one thing I always say, because people always say, oh, lawyers are fine. They're actually not. We talk to lawyers all the time and they're feeling it too, from graduates to partners to barristers. So I think the whole zeitgeist at the moment is the cost of living pressures, and everyone is looking at this potential rate cut as a beacon of hope, because I've got a lot of clients who are holding off putting their pre-approval in place because they're waiting to see what's going on with the market, right? This is such an important thing. If it's not a real impact for someone financially, it's a psychological thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this has probably been exacerbated, as we've discussed before,
Yes.
by expectations that were set,
Correct.
perhaps unfairly.
I'm sorry you listened to what we said and acted on what we said, and now you regret what you do. That was the rhetoric that went out.
That was, and it obviously caused a lot of discontent, amongst the general public. So it's probably worth at this point maybe zooming out a little bit and giving our listeners a bit of a refresher for where we're at with interest rates and what was happening in 2024.
Absolutely. So right now, the RBA cash rate is 4.35%. It's been that way for some time. We have a new governor, Michelle Bullock, who has been very conservative, obviously wants to make sure that we don't rip the Band-Aid off too quickly and start reducing rates. What's happened in the last I guess 3 to 6 months is inflation was at 3.6% in September. But as you said, the data has come out and has caused quite a stir because the target is between 2 and 3%, and it's now at 3.2%. So the arguments for a rate cut are overwhelming. Like it started yesterday, I had a chat with my team and said, we're going to do a training on what happens if rates go down. And I booked that in last week. And it was funny. It started with one big bank, Westpac, saying it's going to go down in February 18th. They moved their prediction from May to February. Then it was 3 out of the big 4, and then it finished the day with 4 out of the big 4 banks. And I heard that Macquarie, the big 5, is actually hiring more staff. So from a banking's perspective, you've got all the banks throwing their weight behind it. We've now got the statistical financial markets are thinking it's going to be an 80% probability of rates potentially coming down. And I think it's fueled by different things such as, increased spending and everything like that, that shows that it probably would be the right move. Now, I always say this on the show and I'll say it again. My crystal ball is broken and I always like to look at both sides of the equation. There are factors that say that it may not go down. While inflation is coming down, there are things like energy spending and other metrics that show that probably might be hesitant to do that. We've got low unemployment right now, which doesn't sit well to lower the rates too quickly. And also there's the thought that if you do cut rates, as I said, there's a psychological thing that everyone wants to get back into the market because we'll talk about what happens, but obviously people's borrowing power goes up. There's more people getting into the market, so it pushes prices up. They don't want to create a bubble too quickly of, increased amount of mortgage activity and more people buying property pushing prices up. So I would say not at 80%. I reckon it could be a 50-50, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably a very wise fence for you to sit on, saying 50-50 rather than 80-20. Let's unpack the potential reasons for and against the rate cut a little bit more. Because as you were speaking, I was imagining that there's probably also a little bit of political pressure, on the board as well.
Yeah, because
with an election
they want a
coming up.
pre-election rate cut. That would do wonders for Labor right now. And that's what I'm reading in the AFR, that they're loving this because if they do show that they can lower inflation and get a rate cut, the people will see, okay, we're getting some relief under Labor. So I think it is very political. Oh, you're right there, Jerome.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the other factors that the board will have to be taking into account right now?
I think they're also going to have to take into account everything going on with not only unemployment, but the retail spending. And they're also going to have to think about the global factors as well, because I believe after the 3 rate cuts in the US, they've held their rates. So with everything going on in the US and Trump and everything like that in the global sense, that we've still got 2 wars going on, major wars, it's not in a bubble. We obviously are in an island, but we've got other things going on, not only domestically, but internationally. So we have to take those things into account as well. And Michelle Bullock, I will say, she is very fair in the way she speaks and she calls a spade from what I've seen. And she's even said, being very conservative in her language. She's not trying to emulate maybe the mishaps of the previous administration and say, look, we're not where we want to be yet. So, and we're going to do everything we can to get there, but we're not going to jump the gun too early.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the Reserve Bank board members don't want to feel they have been peer pressured into this either.
Well, that's the thing that I saw when I think the Treasurer, Dr. Chalmers, was saying, the RBA needs to do something. They're smashing using colloquial stuff like it's smashing the Australian people, and we need to change up the RBA. From my understanding, they already did change up the RBA. They've got Michelle Bullock in there. They've moved the number of rate calls from 11 to 8. There's only 8, and it's every 6 weeks. I think they've done some great things to mean that it is a little bit more structured, and we do get to see behind their decisions. They now meet over 2 days, and their full commentary of what they speak about is actually shown.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of transparency all of a sudden, which is really promising, as you say. But they are getting, I would say, they have been pressured in recent days, certainly in media circles. And I did see, Green Senator Sarah Hanson-Young saying that the RBA needs to bring the meeting forward. Inflation's gone down, and so just make a couple of phone calls and let's bring some relief to Australians sooner. So, yeah, there's some real pressure being placed on them.
Correct. And I think it loses the efficacy of structures in place when you do bow down to peer pressure, because it's like, what's the point of having the structure in place if you're just going to do what people say you're going to do?
Yeah, yeah, and I guess, well, certainly any homeowner, and I have to include myself in that,
Myself as well.
for
I want to
yeah.
see rates go down as
Yeah,
well.
I want to see rates go down, but we want to see them go down for the right reasons. We don't want it to be because the Reserve Bank has been bullied into it by by commentary at large.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I've got clients that not only have mortgages but want to get into the market, and there's some factors at play as well. Because I'm telling clients, and we'll get into that as well, that if you're thinking about getting into the market, probably good to get your pre-approval now, because potentially, and I could be wrong, and I've been wrong in the past, but potentially with rates going down, it may push prices up. So even though your borrowing power goes up, you could find that the price has gone from 1 million to 1.1, 1.2, because there's more competition because more people are in the market.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about the experience of the legal professionals. Now, you mentioned a bit earlier that the lawyers that you and your team speak to,
Yes.
have been doing it tough, and that is certainly not unique. A lot of Australian homeowners and investors have been feeling the same way, even and non-homeowners too, obviously.
Because they
But
pass on the rent rises to their tenants.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, and obviously, without asking you to name names, to tell us a little bit more about what some of the lawyers across the board have been telling the legal home loans team, so we can get a clearer picture for the impacts on lawyers of the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about people with mortgages. So as we know, in 2020, 2021, rates were at an all-time low. People, legal professionals who are able to borrow up to 90% without LMI were, going up to their red line in terms of their borrowing power and buying their dream homes, buying their investment properties at 1.89, 1.99% rates. That's when the cash rate was much, much lower. Now, when rates are, you've had these 13 rate rises, borrowing power has decreased 400,000, but people's repayments have sometimes doubled or tripled. So that's actually quite significant. When your fixed rate comes off, which is what the cliff was happening, it may not have impacted people immediately, but having your repayments go up such a significant amount hurts after a prolonged period of time. So those with existing mortgages on their owner-occupied places we get in touch every 6 months to say, how are we going? Do we need to reprice? So we try and get discounts for our clients. But we've had clients that have bought investment properties on interest only and fixed that have come off after the fantasy rates are gone and their repayments have tripled, and they either have to sell or downsize or do something else. So we have seen a lot of legal professionals sell their investment properties as well, because it's just because they've had a baby and the circumstances change, not just the rates. So when I say it impacts everyone, it really impacts everyone.
And what are some of the factors that are unique to lawyers, whether they're barristers or in private practice,
Yeah.
that might be compounding some of the stresses that they are experiencing, with interest rates?
I think it's the lifestyle creep. As a legal professional, you obviously are very smart, hungry, you want to grow. So whenever someone's income goes up, they become senior associate or they make partner, they naturally want to go and see what they can get in the market for their home. It's only natural. So what we find is, because legal professionals are unique in the fact that they can borrow 90% waived, so with just a 10% deposit, a lot of them, not that we recommend it to go to your red line all the time, they're borrowing at their max borrowing power usually to try and get into their dream home or dream suburb and whatnot, because it's an aspirational thing for them. So what we're finding is, when we were doing the locking in the rates or organising the rates before, it does hurt no matter what level it's hurting right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, based on the conversations that you and the team have been having, with lawyers, in recent months, coming into 2025, how high up the priority list, have these concerns been for them? When it comes to, they're worried about AI and having to onboard that properly, cybersecurity concerns and all of that. I mean, do you think that financial security is right up there with some of their headline concerns?
I think it's the one thing you argue about with your partner, right? Is money. And I was having a laugh with Christy Kelwell from Kelwell Valuations, and she's got a theory that when property prices go up, more divorces happen because you can get more out of your property. I'd never thought of it that way, but money is inherently in everything, right? And financial stress is occurring all across the board. What we find with legal professionals in particular is at the different levels, they are uniquely placed to kind of alleviate some of those concerns. So if they need to, you know, reorganize their things through us, we can do that. So we are organizing a lot of repricing. So in the past, when we call someone at 6 months into their loan, usually they're like, "Oh, Cullen, I'm fine." But the conversation is received very differently now. It's like, "Cullen, please do what you can, whatever, even if it's 5 or 10 basis points, let's see what we can do."
Yeah, that point about financial stress is an important one because I think, as you're well aware, there has been a lot of good chat about improving the holistic well-being of legal professionals in,
100%.
in recent years. But I think for the community at large, the idea that lawyers would be experiencing financial stress,
That's the thing. Like,
is something that they would probably scoff at.
no, it's kind of like, "Oh,
Yeah.
where's the violin?" And I really, not annoys me, but it's kind of like they're people too, and it's something that affects everyone. Like, no one is immune to this.
Yeah, but I think that there probably ends up being a little bit of a sort of stigma around it,
Yes.
societal and or self stigma that lawyers are remunerated well, which
Yes.
is true,
Which is true.
but it doesn't change the fact that they can and will also experience financial stress, and they should feel free to be able to talk about that, if that is the case.
No, of course, and I think that's why we've seen an explosion, not only in our individual capacity to help lawyers, but at the firm level. We do a lot with the big law firms, and I think we're in about 36% of big law firms now with our staff benefits program, because the good firms are actually seeing that financial stress is happening, financial well-being is important, and they want to back their team with the biggest important purchase or weight of their lives, which is their home. So I applaud the HR teams and the firms that have onboarded us, because it's showing to your team that you care about them, and you're not just giving them gym memberships or discounts off stuff they don't need. It's actually tangible, and it really helps them.
Yeah. So let's. Sorry, I'll start that again. That probably offers us a nice little segue into talking about the unique position that lawyers find themselves in,
Yes.
financially and professionally,
Yes.
in order to leverage their job titles,
Yes.
in
Yes.
order to get ahead. And this obviously pertains to the financial stress that they can and may experience, and hopefully would alleviate it. So, we have discussed this on the show before, obviously, but for those who haven't heard your dulcet tones before, would you mind unpacking the unique financial benefits that lawyers have access to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, being the only mortgage broker for lawyers, we've done this for the last 7 years. We understand the profession, and we understand the banks that do the special things. The big thing out there, I'm still surprised when people say, "Cullen, I didn't know this," but lawyers with a practicing certificate, that's all they need, can buy with just a 10% deposit. That's very helpful for getting into the market. That's very helpful to get an investment property. It's also helpful for removing a guarantor or refinancing and releasing equity for, improvements around the house. Because that's another big thing. People can't maybe afford the next home, but you can improve the place that you're living in. So that 90% policy is very helpful. We order a complimentary valuation and see what we can release against it. So that's open to all legal professionals. Let's look at maybe the upper echelon. So partners or newly minted partners, it's very frustrating for them because they become a partner, then they go and speak to the bank, and then the bank goes, "Oh, you're self-employed. We can't help you." Or they ask for the financials for, I don't know, a HSF or something. Like and it's like, you don't understand what I am. Basically, there's banks that can look at a new partner, get a bank statement and a CFO letter, and get lending on their new scale. And we're doing that all the time. And not only that, accessing the private banks as well. So we've got access to not only the top private banks, but the Australia's top private bankers, which kind of helps the process because you want that person on your side. And firm owners and barristers, who are obviously a different beast in themselves, because barristers are sole traders. They can't have a company ABN. They've got different needs. Like the 90% is important, but a lot of them, especially in Sydney in the two towers, I call it, the Wentworth buildings, need to buy into chambers. So you need to know which banks can do chambers lending, 100% unsecured or maybe secured against your home. So whereas most banks and brokers focus on rate, "Oh, we'll get you the best rate." Yeah, rate's one thing, but you got to look at the holistic thing. And I always say, you're a lawyer, you got to get something for being a lawyer. So leveraging your profession for the biggest financial decision you'll ever make is important.
Some of the listeners may have missed it, but I appreciated your Lord of the Rings reference.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I try and get that in, and I do usually get a bit of a chuckle. Why not?
And what if you're a young lawyer, who maybe doesn't have that many years of PQE under their belt, do they have access to these same benefits?
Yeah, it's a good question because when we started our business, we were amazed about the lies and false propaganda that was being spread out there. We heard to get the 10%, you had to be a partner, you had to be earning over 200,000, you had to be doing this, you had to be 5 years PQE. It's all rhubarb, and don't listen to it. I will just say that all you need is that practicing certificate. There are 4 banks that do that policy, particularly, but at least one of them, they just need the practicing certificate. We have had instances where even if you don't have one, but your title is lawyer, you know, bending the rules with our unique relationship with the bank, we're able to get it over the line. So I always say it's case by case. Come and speak to us and we can see if we can get it sorted.
So, with all those benefits in mind, and against the backdrop of the socioeconomic, cultural and
Yes.
political factors that we were discussing earlier, and another one we didn't flesh out was the fact that the Aussie dollar has recently taken a bit of a tumble.
Yeah, good point,
against the
actually.
greenback.
Yes.
With all of those factors in mind, is now a good time for lawyers to be seeking pre-approval? Have they missed the boat? Would they be going too early if they did it now?
No, it's a good question, Jerome, and I'm glad you asked it. I would say no matter what's happening in the environment, while it's important, you always have to run your own race. And if you are ready now, you are thinking about buying in the next 3 to 6 months or organising your finance, pre-approval is key. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to use a broker. And I always say you'd rather have it, not need it, and need it, not have it. And, lawyers are very smart people, so they'd understand this. The reticular activating system in the mind, once you say you're going to buy a red car or you've got your pre-approval, you see a red car everywhere, the ones that you're going to buy, especially for property, you start, you may have been flicking through domain and realestate.com, but once you've got your pre-approval and you know with certainty how much you can buy and you've got it ready to go, it changes the way you approach those homes. Suddenly it's like, we're going to see this home on the weekend. And my advice is if you've got that pre-approval, sometimes, and it's actually more common than you think, you may put in a bid for a place and it may be, 50 to 100,000 lower than someone else. But because that person doesn't have pre-approval, the real estate agent, and lawyers and real estate agents don't mix at the best of times, but the real estate agent goes with the person with the pre-approval because they know how hard it is to get one, how long it takes. And it's, one in the hand's worth two in the bush kind of thing. So you having that pre-approval is like gold in the eyes of these agents because it's kind of putting you at the top of the list that says you are ready and you're ready to go.
Yeah, and in addition to those benefits that you just fleshed out, lawyers are pretty time poor. It's fair to say. So really adds weight to the idea that get your ducks in a row so that you can pull that trigger as soon as you want.
Correct. And I always say that most people are doing their home loans, as much as the firms don't want to say this with the billable hour, they're doing it at work. And so if you're doing it yourself or using a don't want to denigrate, but an incompetent professional helping you, it's 31 billable hours of your time that a home loan is, right? So you want to outsource it to professionals who can take away that 31 billable hours. You rest assured that it's done, and then your firm can make the 31,000 in billables if you're charging $1,000 an hour. So, in my mind, we're in the business of time, not finance.
So, Cullen, sort of summarising this conversation then, and whether or not rates will go down. You've already made a 50-50 prediction, which I think is
but I'm
pretty
hoping
fair.
They do go down.
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
Well, as am I. To be very clear.
My
with
wife
the
said,
listener.
"Make sure you tell Jerome that we want rates to go down." I'm like, "Okay, madam, that's it."
Yeah. What will this mean for lawyers? We're talking about financial stress, and all of the other professional challenges that they have. We're talking about the environmental factors. What do you think a rate cut will mean for lawyers?
Well, it's amazing, and being in the media, Jerome, it's all about the sentiment. I think we're going to see if rates go down, this whole swell of positive energy. You're going to see articles about now's the time to get into the market, and I see, and I'm predicting that it's going to create a bit of competition out there. Suddenly, not only your borrowing power goes up, but everyone's borrowing power goes up. And as I said, if they weren't feeling the pinch before, it's a psychological barrier that's been removed. It shows that the times are different. So they're going to see two things. They're going to see a lot of positivity in the market, but also it may negatively impact them because the competition is now there.
Yeah. And for lawyers who feel like they are lacking education around all of these points, they may read the headlines, certainly in Lawyers Weekly, but in other lesser media outlets as well. Are there ways that time-poor lawyers, in particular, can upskill a little bit and have a little bit more savvy and know-how around some of these matters so that they can feel more empowered and motivated to go and get that pre-approval, for example?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Jerome. And one of my leading partners, who was one of our first clients that supported us, shout out to them. They know who they are. They said, Cullen, I became a lawyer not because I was good at maths, but because I was good at English and words and the law. So the good lawyers and the smart lawyers, which is what we're talking about, outsource the things that they don't know and partner with a trusted expert that can help them. And the biggest thing I can say is, talk to a leading broker who can actually tell you, give you a snapshot of where the market's at, but also tell you where you're at, because it's amazing when you know how your individual circumstance fits in with the larger world, that you understand the world more. Once you understand what your borrowing power is and how that differs to purchasing power, how much cash you have, and what a pre-approval is, how long it takes about 24 hours to a week, that it lasts for 90 days, that it costs nothing, that you can always roll over your pre-approval. Once you've got in the process and you're I guess a pre-approval holder, as it were, it's amazing how much your financial world opens up, and you are the expert at, when you're at the lunch with your colleagues. It's like, yeah, I got a pre-approval. I'm looking at properties now. Like the learning curve I see is like a logarithmic one. Once you've done it once, there's no going back, and you can help others.
Well, we're recording this at the end of January,
Yes.
and you are listening to this at the end of January, I assume, if you listen to it on the day we publish it. As we talked about earlier, the Reserve Bank is meeting in just over a fortnight, and we'll be very keen to get Legal Home Loans take on what that decision by the Reserve Bank will mean. As many of our readers will know, we partner with Legal Home Loans for the 8 cash rate calls that happen across the calendar year, and we're very grateful to have that partnership with Legal Home Loans and get their unique expertise into what all of this means for lawyers. Now, Cullen, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your newly released book.
Oh, that's very kind of you,
the,
Jerome.
the Laws of LinkedIn. I've got a copy of it sitting right here in front of me on the table. Tell our listeners about this book.
Look, it's a bit of a love letter to our business and the way we started. Look, for many of you who know, who've been following my journey on LinkedIn, I've got 2 little boys now. Before they were born, I went to Byron Bay with Madam on a baby moon, and I like to write, I like to journal. And this, I started to write chapters, and it kind of flowed out over the next 4 days, kind of put together everything that we'd learned. And I thought, why not put this into a book? Because I always get asked questions, how do you find clients? How do you find your niche? How do you actually grow a tribe? How do you, find business and revenue through LinkedIn? And I thought, what? I'm just going to put everything that we'd learned down, personal. It's not an academic paper. It is, real time tested, split tested things that we did to grow our business. And, you know this writing a book as well, Jerome. You think that you're done just writing the book. There are so many other steps that if I'd known now, I probably wouldn't have started, because there's just so many steps. But I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad it's in physical form. And it's, I didn't write anyone who writes books knows you don't do it to make money. You do it to have an impact. And I hope this impact will help the next person, lawyer or entrepreneur wanting to start their new practice or anything, upskill and, make an impact on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and why do you think it's so critical for lawyers and of course non-lawyers
Yes.
as well to upskill in these ways? What is it about the current climate, professionally and out there in the marketplace that requires lawyers to have this kind of know-how?
No, well, I won't use the word sales role, but I'll say every lawyer is in BD. Like, you're technically competent, but you need to make sure that you're out and about and your next deal is coming to you. So in this market, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So there's 1 billion people on LinkedIn, but only 1% of people are using it properly. And it's amazing that if you just do 1 post a week or, elevate it to a post a day, how much you get put in the feed of your prospective clients. And it's amazing. Look, I talked to Annie Kane in the Advisor podcast earlier today, and I see myself as like a Z-list LinkedIn celebrity kind of thing. Like, I'm not famous in any ways, but it's nice when people stop you on the street and go, hey, I saw your latest video. Oh, by the way, I need to talk to you, Cullen. Or they feel like they know you because you put yourself out there. So I think it's important that lawyers realize that it is your personal brand is you, and it's not marketing. It's just, it's basically you're taking pride in you as a company, really, because that's what people know you for. So I always use the word document, don't create. maybe talk about an anonymous matter that you helped on, what you're doing, what your daily schedule is, even put your personal thing. I talk in the book about, LinkedIn is LinkedIn, personal is personal. That's old. People want to see what you're doing for your workouts, how you spend time with your family. And it's amazing how many people reach out and go, hey, I didn't know you cycled. Let's go for a cycle one day. So this book is really all about being authentically you, but communicating your mission so you can not only find the people that you want to serve, but build a following and obviously help not only you, but maybe your firm or your business.
And for our listeners who want to check out your book, where can they find it?
Oh, thanks, Jerome. Look, it's all major retail outlets, but I'd say Amazon is probably the most popular. Very easy. It ships within a couple of days. And the Kindle is out as well. And soon to be the Audible is coming out as well. I got notification that that's due very soon because I know people don't read books anymore as much as I'd like them to. So you can consume it on the audio version as well.
Well, that is The Laws of LinkedIn by Cullen Haynes. Be sure to check it out. Cullen, thanks so much for coming into the studio and talking to us about interest rates.
Thanks so much, Jerome. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for all you do, mon ami.
Oh, you're most welcome. And like I said, we're very pleased to have our continued partnership with Legal Home Loans. It means a lot to us. Thank you to the listener for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give us a rating and review on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts, as it'll help other lawyers discover and enjoy this show. And if you've got ideas for other episodes we can run, please get in touch at editor@lawyersweekly.com.au. You can also reach us on social media. See you again next time.
Thank you so much,
Great.
Jerome. That was fantastic, mon ami.
No, I enjoyed that. What was that? Half an hour exactly.
Perfect.
Great.
That's going to make for a great episode.
Yeah. So that'll be out by 4 o'clock, I guess. 4:30, depending on how quick the edit is.
No, that's so awesome.
But I don't think that needs much editing. I can put that in.
No, I think that really went well.
Yeah,
I think really good.
So too.
And we'll get
these are your copies.
No, I've got 2 copies. No, they're Annie's copies.
Oh, they're Annie's. I'll take them down.
I've got 2 more
for her.
copies for you that you can give to any one of your choosing.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. I will just grab Jordan so we can
Get a little cheeky photo.
Chris, our accounts.
Fantastic. We look forward to seeing Chris.
Yeah. What's on the rest of the day?
Well, after our coffee, I think I got a coffee with Adrian Corbald.
Oh,
yeah.
I know the name. I can't put a face to it.
Hey, good to
Chris. Oh, you okay?
Sorry, I've done that before. That's the second time I've done that here.
Oh.
Where do you want to stand here and then we'll get a...
What are we going for?
Get all the paraphernalia in there and then we'll do like a sitting down shot. Good man.
Lovely.
Here we go.
Put the headphones on.
Oh, it's all about the...
Yeah, hide the corner.
Yeah. Good
Great.
man. Thanks again, my friend.
Thanks, Chris.
Nah, that looks good. You've done this before.
All right, and much on for the weekend?
How much on? What have I got this weekend? I've got...
I'll take those for
Oh, yes. I think it's Baby Kingdom. We're looking at some more prams because we're going overseas in April. So we need a good pram that will not only fit